From the Mapleview Animal Hospital studios, this is the WHTC Morning News with Gary Stevens and Peg McNichol on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And welcome back to WHTC's Morning News for this Tuesday, May 12th. Tuesday mornings, we have a chance to chat with Congressman Fred Upton, who represents Allegan County in the U.S. House of Representatives. And for the last few weeks, we've had Zoom conversations with Fred from his home in the St. Joseph area. But today, he joins us from the chamber of the U.S. House of Representatives. Fred, good morning. Wow.
Good morning. That's just the backdrop that we used when we did a virtual Congress.
Okay. You got me.
So we told you it worked, huh?
It did. It had to look, and Peg is looking behind us. And
yeah.
A surprise.
I just don't know how to take it off, but I'm on my side porch, and I got two ducks underneath my bird. Looking at a blue sky, and it's a little chilly out there.
Yeah, well. Oh, by the way, this is not exactly where you sit, do you?
Well, I've actually been upgraded.
Oh.
So my wife kicked me out of the kitchen. It was a little too small.
Okay.
So I'm on the side porch.
Okay, I was not the side porch. I meant the view we're looking from behind of the.
Yeah. So what it is when you get on Zoom and you look at your rebroadcast, but you're looking at it live. We actually, the Problem Solvers Caucus had a virtual debate last week on the promise or the issue of state and local funding. And so we had one of my colleagues act as the speaker, and he can be because I'm not always as close in the speaker's chair. We yielded back time. The gentleman is recognized from New York for 2 minutes or whatever. We did our speeches. We had to, some of my colleagues had to be reminded to unmute themselves as they went, but we had an hour debate just to prove that we could do it, and most of us used this same backdrop of the empty chamber.
Yeah, and again, you fooled me, and I will fully admit that. But let me ask you a question because of how that hearing went. And how we're seeing now with some of these virtual hearings on the Senate side, is that adding to some of the fuel about maybe loosening up some of the House rules about having members always in present for casting votes and conducting businesses?
Well, if we do that, it's going to have to be bipartisan because we've always had the requirement that you have to be in person on the House floor to vote. You actually put your voting card into a machine. But it hasn't stopped us from having virtual hearings. There's a lot of publicity today about Senator Lamar Alexander having a virtual hearing today with Tony Fauci. He being Alexander is actually self-quarantined at his home as he's got a staff member that was tested positive, who he was relatively close to, I guess, in this last week. But we've been doing virtual hearings, including yesterday. My Consumer Protection Subcommittee had a virtual hearing with the chairman of the the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Bipartisan. I talked to my chairman of the Energy Subcommittee yesterday. We're talking about getting the current Secretary of Energy and the former one there for a hearing when Congress comes back. It'll be changed a lot. There won't be any people in the gallery or the visitors section. It will be publicized. Yesterday's hearing with the FTC was as well. So we're making adjustments to try and move forward.
We're talking with Congressman Fred Upton, Zoom connection today. I need to bring this up with you and get your thoughts. President Trump said yesterday that coronavirus case numbers are declining all throughout the country, but data collected by his own task force shows that from NBC News, produced for the task force, the tables, and not publicly disclosed, list 10 counties where states have jumped between 100% and 1,000% in the space of a week in Tennessee, Iowa, Kentucky, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Georgia. And there were another 10 counties with increases of 64% to 186%. Is it, how tough is it to try to sort of go with these numbers that we are seeing and the president's statements that seem to run contrary. There seems to be a lot of contradictions, and it puts Republicans such as yourself maybe on the defensive in that regard, because they're saying, hey, president is flat out lying to the American people based on some of the numbers we're seeing.
Well, a couple things that I might suggest. One is, when you look at the region, and again, if you go to my website, upton.house.gov, and look at my kitchen table report from last night, I actually have a link where you can go to the Johns Hopkins, which is wrote the Bible on this, I guess you could say, in terms of what are the county totals nationwide. It's updated all the time, but it really, it in essence, gives you the idea that we should be looking at this as a region. Of course, there are areas that are going up, and it's tragic in those 10 states, as you might suggest. In Michigan, it appears as though we have flattened the curve. It's actually coming down. I haven't looked at the stats yet this morning that might have been announced last night, but our number of deaths are down. Our number of positive cases are down relative to where they were 2 or 3 weeks ago. I just saw on the news a few minutes ago in New York, upstate New York, and I talked to one of my colleagues late last night from upstate New York. They too, their region has come down, so we're making progress. But yes, there are areas, those 10 states, tragically have a dramatic increase. But that's why we have to look at this at a region, and always remember that until we have a vaccine, until we have a therapeutic, we do have to remember our social distancing, wear that mask when we're out in public, particularly in an enclosed space like a post office or a grocery store, or maybe even your place of business if you're there outside your house.
Peg McNichol has a question for you.
Just getting back to Gary's question, I think one part of his question is, people are questioning the president's credibility, and by default, does that challenge yours? Because the president has been inconsistent with information when the facts often contradict him. So we're talking that the question is credibility, the president's credibility versus yours.
Yeah, I didn't watch his press conference, but I know that there are regions that are going up, and I think maybe he could have answered the job answered the question in maybe a little bit better way, as he might have explained it yesterday. But again, I didn't see it, and I know that there was a lot of controversy at the end that I heard about on the national news at 6 o'clock this morning.
Now, the thing is, though, Fred, and Peg, I'll add on to this as well. That leads to maybe a tension that you and other Republican lawmakers have, because, yes, your leader of the party has had some issues, but if you go against your party, there'll be those in the Republican side saying, well, he's a rhino and not, fully behind the president. And yet those who are against the president would say, well, he's just being a puppet for the president. You guys can't win either way.
Well, I don't know that people could accuse me of doing that. I respect the office of the presidency, that's for sure. But yeah, my focus has been to the future. At some point, we're going to come back and look at the mistakes that we made. And yes, every nation has, every leader makes mistakes. That's for sure. But we have to get through this right now. Our emphasis has to be on finding the vaccine. We all wanted the country to open up by Easter. The vaccine wasn't going to let us do that. And we made, here in Michigan, and we're seeing a slow opening up of the state. Landscapers, construction folks, realtors, being able to sell cars. My sense is that we'll see some more. We saw this week of the auto suppliers beginning to open up with production at about 25% of the levels, knowing that next week the big three, GM, Ford, Chrysler, anticipates actually assembling cars. And of course, to do that, they've got to have the parts to do that, which is why it was important that a number of factories open up this week, at least with limited production, ensuring that their workers are safe. And we've seen that in the Holland area as well. I talked to Transmatic a couple weeks ago. They've made a lot of adjustments in terms of shields and masks, all of that. That technology, those routines are hopefully catch up with all of us pretty soon. And in fact, we will get back to the point where we were once a few months ago.
We're talking with Congressman Fred Upton. I do want to bring this up because at least 17 states, Fred, are calling on Congress to investigate China's role in the coronavirus pandemic. Leading the effort is South Carolina's Attorney General Alan Wilson, who sent a letter to both House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, demanding that both chambers' foreign relations committees hold hearings, saying the Communist Chinese government willfully and knowingly concealed information about the severity of the virus while simultaneously stockpiling personal protective equipment. Missouri is also another state that has called for some congressional looking into China. Is it too soon to do this, or is this something that these attorney generals they have a point and need to move forward on this?
Well, I expect those hearings to take place. Just before we left, we had votes 2 weeks ago now. There's now a select committee. Kevin McCarthy, our leader, appointed members last week, Republican members. I think it's a 12-member committee, 7 Democrats, 5 Republicans. I suspect that that'll be one of the issues that they look at. But I do think that it's appropriate that the Foreign Affairs Committee begin to look at this. I know that all of us have been frustrated that the CDC and others were not allowed. These are U.S. agencies, were not allowed into China. Still, even in recent times now, to look at the data in terms of what China might have withheld. Until we know what those answers are, those questions are going to linger. And at the end of the day, again, my emphasis today, vaccine, workers be safe, therapeutics, flatten the curve, a lot of different issues. But there are others on those other committees with jurisdiction that, in fact, are going to need to find those answers. They might as well start now. But at the end of the process, maybe a few months from now, I hope that we'll have the answers. But yeah, that's certainly within the jurisdiction, and they ought to take those efforts seriously and begin.
Congressman Fred Upton joins us Tuesday mornings to talk about things going on in Washington. Sometimes he fools us with the backdrop of the U.S. House and his Zoom connection, but we appreciate your time as always, Fred, and look forward to chatting with you again, probably via Zoom next week. Well, pretty soon. Maybe it won't be a fake background in the U.S. House when you chat with us. Have a good week, sir. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
And that is Fred Upton on Real News Now 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.